Okay, gentlemen, I will say welcome back to another episode of All About Balance. We are still thinking of a name for the new podcast, so I will not introduce the new name. We are joined by an invisible Jack Sear in the hammock. Hello, Jack. How you doing?
Ready for a quick flash? Bam.
I actually it didn't even pop up on Zoom, mate. It was that fucking quick. It didn't even pop up on Zoom.
So quick. That was just for the fans.
Only fans, actually. And yeah, we are joined by Manchester's best wrestler, Sean McGuinness. How's it going?
Oh, God, stop it. Yeah, good. Thank you, Harry. Good.
Excellent. So we're recording this in a relatively tumultuous time for UFC 251. News broke yesterday, I think, that Dorino Burns has been tested positive for coronavirus. He did not board the chartered plane to Yas Island, UFC Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Therefore, as it stands right now on the 5th of July, there is no main event for Usman. There are talks of Gamebred Jorge Masvidal stepping in on, what is it now, 6 days notice and taking that fight. Boys, what do we think about that? What do we think about, first of all, Dorino Burns getting positive tests and Masvidal potentially stepping in?
I'm gutted, to be honest, because I know some people have been sceptical of Gilbert's run at welterweight, and I think people maybe been picking holes in the fact that Maia and Woodley are definitely in the twilight of their career. But I actually thought it presented some interesting stylistic problems for Usman in that he has always been confident in his wrestling. But I was pretty confident he wasn't going to be looking to take Gilbert down, right? And I think that can be kind of cemented by the fact that he was moving out to Colorado to train with Trevor Whitman, who's obviously predominantly like a boxing specialist as far as MMA coaches go. So yeah, definitely gutted about that. It's going to be interesting to see if they can get all of the boxes ticked and all their kind of everything aligned to get Masvidal over. I've seen some of the kind of pre-fight schedule and testing and whatnot that you need to do in order to get approved in Yas Island, and yeah, it looks like it's definitely going to be tough within kind of 7 days or so. But I guess we just have to cross our fingers and hope.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely highlighted sort of more of the challenges that sort of go with the virus in terms of getting certain events and fights to happen. Like I think with Gilbert training in Florida, I think it was Luke Thomas put something up yesterday that they have one of the highest like concentration of cases. So depending on where you're from, you know, as a fighter, it obviously has a big impact. In terms of the fight, it's Kamaru's call, but I think from my perspective, or from Kamaru's perspective, I wouldn't want to be taking a fight at that short notice with someone like Jorge Masvidal, because he's such a veteran at this point that I don't think he necessarily needs a camp to pull off, you know, a pretty huge upset there. But from the way things are trending on Instagram and stuff, it looks like Kamaru actually seems pretty game.
Oh, I like that. Kamaru is game for Gamebred. Nice, Sean. Nice.
Oh.
Personally, I think Kamaru should stay away from this fight. I really do. I think that, look, when it comes, fighters work their career to get to this point, right? And by this point, they've put 10, 15, 20 years into becoming a UFC champion. When they become a UFC champion, the goal is to fucking keep that belt for as long as possible and defend it as many times as possible, because that's where the money is, right? These guys are only really getting paid, unless you're an Alistair Overeem that's been in the game forever and is just making serious cash at this point. Like, you have to be a champion for as long as possible to rein in that money. It's not unheard of. We all know that that's how it works. So for Kamaru to have had a full camp for training for a guy that he doesn't want to take down and he doesn't really want to wrestle, to a guy in Jorge who he probably is relatively comfortable to take down because he doesn't want to stand with him, right? I mean, Kamaru's obviously got good hands and good boxing. We saw that against Colby, but look, I mean, you don't want Jorge to start developing a boxing rhythm against you, because then it's going to be difficult, right? So I think for Kamaru from a financial perspective, he should not be taking this fight unless the UFC are willing to really, really compensate him. And I don't think in the current climate they're going to be. Other than that, from athletic standpoint, shit, man, take that fight. Let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see what happens. Let's fucking see what happens. I think the only thing I would say to both of your points about rigorous testing schedules and whatever is that we must remember that this is the UFC. And at the end of the day, if Dana wants something, he will do whatever he can to make it happen. So, the very fact that he's got Yas Island set up means huge money for Abu Dhabi. So if Abu Dhabi have to bend the rules in order to bring this monster fight over, I'm sure it would happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it wouldn't be the first time either that they brought in a fighter to fight for a title at super short notice. Like the sort of Joe Soto, TJ Dillashaw sort of springs to mind where, I can't even remember. Was that even 24 hours notice?
Yeah, I think it was just over 24 hours notice.
Yeah, and just pulled Joe Soto into that title fight. But I think it may have been you a while ago, Harry, that said something about fighters that have gone in on short notice winning like a huge majority of those fights. Was that you?
It's guys that miss weight.
Oh, fuck.
So
okay.
Guys that miss weight, there's like a really, really high percentage of fighters missing weight that then go on to win that fight.
Oh, okay. I thought it was people that sort of come in on short notice. But yeah. I still think there's advantages that go with that.
I agree. I mean, look, I think there's definitely something psychologically to say an Usman has been preparing for a Burns for, let's say, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And then Kamaru then gets a late opponent change. Jorge doesn't have a camp, so he's just going to go in and do whatever he wants, really. There's probably something freeing about that to Jorge. And it's not like Jorge hasn't studied Masvidal. Sorry, he's definitely studied himself, but like he hasn't studied Usman. He doesn't know his game. Of course he does. Like he's a top 5 welterweight. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Just initial picks. If it does happen, Sean, who have you got? Jorge or Usman?
I think I may go with Jorge with that. I think for me, just some real quick X factors. I think Jorge's takedown defense has always been something that's quite a strong aspect of his game, even though I think Usman probably still has, out of the people he's fought, like a better sort of mat returning system. But I think just the surprise factor, I think it does throw fighters off when, like you say, they prepared for one guy for 5 weeks and then someone else comes in who's composed enough to seize the moment. And I think Jorge is one of those people.
Jack?
I'm actually leaning much more towards Usman. I think if Masvidal had a full camp, I think that he can present a lot of problems for Usman, especially because he's got such good takedown defense and he's just generally just a really, really crafty guy. But we have no idea what kind of shape Masvidal's in. We know that Usman's been out in Colorado for the last 4 weeks. And yeah, I would just expect. Without those questions being answered around kind of Masvidal's condition and whatnot, I think the safe pick would definitely be with Usman.
I agree, and I think that if Usman is intelligent, if this fight happens, what would be an intelligent strategy for me would be to put Jorge against the cage and wear on him, make him tired, make him wrestle hard, make him defend, and essentially adopt a little bit of a Colby Covington versus Robbie Lawler, where strike when he's expecting to shoot and shoot when he's expecting to strike. Make sure that Jorge can't get into his striking rhythm because, as you say, Sean, his takedown defense is really good, but defending takedowns still saps your energy. And if you haven't had a full camp and you're just rolling off a sofa, we saw with Chad Mendes, Conor McGregor, right? Chad Mendes comes in, takes Conor down a little bit short, and okay, Conor had one leg and whatever, but Conor wore him out, right? Wore him down, wore him out, and eventually managed to get the finish. So I think, look, we say that, and then Masvidal will run across and fly and knee him again, and that's it.
I think one other factor that's also important to consider is the weight cut, right? Like what's Masvidal weighing at the moment? We know that fighters have got to be quarantined within their hotel room. once they get to Yaz Island as well. So yeah, that is another thing that I think could
That's
potentially
huge.
scupper Masvidal from having a good performance.
Yeah. All right. Let's actually get onto the card. So I'll just run through the card very quickly. So at the moment, the main event is Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski. We then have Piotr Jan versus Jose Aldo. We have Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. Volkan Ozdemir versus Yuri Prochazka. Paige Van Zandt versus Amanda Ribas. Aliziu Zaleski dos Santos versus Muslim Salikov, which is a great fight. Makwan Amekanu, Danny Henry. To be honest, from here, the fights kind of fall off a little bit. But we then have Leonardo Santos versus Roman Bogotov. We have Marcin Tybura versus Maxim Grishin. Jack, please pronounce the next gentleman's name for me.
Zhalgas Zhumagulov.
Thank you very much, sir. That was perfect. Versus
Thank you.
Roylian Paiva. We then have Carol Rosa versus Vanessa Mello. And we will start with Martin Day versus the British veteran, Davy Grant, from your hometown, Manchester, Sean. Jack, if you want to take us away on what your thoughts are.
Definitely. So I will, before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty of this matchup, I must say that I am a massive Davy Grant fan.
Me too.
I've been his fan throughout TUF. I think that he's one of those people whereby, because his career has been so littered with injuries and just generally unfortunate incidents, I have rooted for him even more. And I have once actually seen a Davy Grant fairly drunk on red wine shooting double legs on bar stools. So there is a lot for me to love about Davy Grant. In terms of this matchup, it's a really, really fun matchup. Matched very well, to be honest. So Martin Day is also coming in on a bit of a layoff. I think he's had a shoulder injury and he hasn't fought until I think his last fight was at the tail end of 2018. In terms of the stylistic matchup, so Martin Day is Hawaiian. He's predominantly a striker. Very, very kind of polished boxing. He's got a very long right hand. Tall for the weight class, which is pretty crazy as well because he fought on Dana White's Contender Series as a flyweight, a 5'10" flyweight. When do you ever see one of those? He loves. He's a big fan of spinning kicks, and it actually something that got him in trouble early on in his career. He fought fellow UFC vet Nolan Hernandez. Threw a spinning back kick. It got caught, taken down, and unfortunately he was pounded out. But yeah, the biggest kind of change to Martin Day's game I've seen in recent months, or basically his last performance, is his takedown defense. So he fought, and I'm going to probably butcher this name because I'm not particularly great with Chinese names, but is it Ping Yuan Lu? Am I right with that?
Yeah, I think you've got pretty. Yeah.
Let's just call him Lou for now.
Yeah.
He fought Lou, but his takedown defense looked much more sturdy compared to his fight in the Contender Series. Then when we look at Davy Grant's a bit of an all-rounder. Also likes a spinning kick or two, and especially kind of like a hopping side kick to the body. Davy Grant's best work has always been done on the ground. Decent passer, very active, and yeah, just both of them are all-round fun fighters. I think for me, what the difference here is, I think Grant's a little bit more reckless, especially on his feet. And I don't always necessarily think he fights with a particular purpose when he's striking. He's just kind of a bit of a wild man. Whereas I've seen Martin Day be a little bit more calculated. And as I mentioned earlier, he's got that really, really long right hand as well. I think it's going to be one of those fun action fights of the night. One of those ones where, because it's such a star-studded card, it's probably not going to get a lot of attention beforehand. But I expect this to unravel into a really, really fun back and forth bantamweight contest.
Sean, you got anything to add?
I think that Jack's hit most of the points there, to be honest. I think I'll just jump on what you guys have both said. I'm also a big fan of Davy Grant.
Of course, it's from your hometown.
But yeah, I think that I think injuries have sort of slowed him down a bit, but he's shown some glimpses there of some decent potential. You know, he's got a decision win from quite a few years ago against Marlon Vera. And yeah, just the same as Jack, really. I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I think both of them have those sort of flashy spinning techniques as well. So yeah, I just think it'll be good fun, this one.
I agree. I think what's really interesting about Davy Grant is he's got so many submission wins, 8 submission wins, and every single one of his losses is a submission. He's got 4 losses and all of them by sub. Triangles, rear naked chokes, and an armbar. Interesting. But yeah, I mean, I really hope that Davy Grant does well in this fight. As we've all said, he's been plagued by injury. He's had an up and down record in the UFC because of that. And, you know, he's had some matches where really he should have won. You know, the opponents are opponents that he should have beaten, but he's probably taken fights on injuries and all sorts of things. But yes, that's, should be definitely a good scrap. So we'll move on to the first female fight of the night. Carol Rosa versus Vanessa Mello. Sean, do you want to take us away, sir?
Yeah, sort of different to the last fight. I don't have the highest hopes in the world for this one, to be honest.
Wow, rude. Rude.
Yeah, I think this is most likely going to a decision. Just a couple of things with both girls. I think Vanessa Mello she's had quite a tough start to a UFC tenure, especially her fight against Irene Aldana.
Yeah, Irene Aldana's the truth, man.
I was going to say I'm really, really excited to watch her versus Holly Holm soon. But yeah, Irene Aldana just absolutely pieced her up. And it seems like Vanessa falls into this trap quite a lot where she will pressure, but instead of cutting off the ring, she'll follow people, meaning that people can sort of bait her in like Irene Aldana and sort of pick her off with counters quite easily. And when she does land, it seems that she's quite heavy-handed, but she just doesn't really seem to land with a great deal of frequency. And when the fight's sort of running away from her, she doesn't seem to get any more urgent to sort of, try and win it back. Carol Rosa is sort of like the opposite. She had a good sort of UFC debut against Lara Procopio. I just think with that one, I think Carol was quite clearly like a much better fighter. And I don't think that she was quite going after the finish the way she could do. There were even moments where Lara was kind of collapsing to the floor without a takedown, and, you know, which should be a massive sign that the fight is near to a finish or it's time to try and get that fighter out. And Carol never really sort of capitalized on that, which sort of, to me, suggests a bit of a lack of killer instinct. But at the end of the day, they're both pretty early in their sort of UFC career. But yeah, I think this one's going to a decision, unfortunately.
I mean, possibly the stats on Carol Rosa tell a slightly different. Carol Rosa tell a slightly different story, right? Of her 12 wins, she has 4 knockouts and two submissions. In her last 3 fights, she's got 2 finishes. So, you know, I mean, I don't quite have the same pessimism as you, Sir Sean, but but you know, look, I mean, either way, as you rightly say, both of these ladies are very, very fresh in their UFC career. 2 fights between them in the UFC. I don't know what we're going to see necessarily. You know, you never know. The UFC debuts are always something that's extremely difficult to judge a fighter on. So yeah, I mean, let's see what happens. Jack, have you got anything to add on that fight?
I share Sean's pessimism.
How dare you?
I knew I could rely on Jack for some pessimism.
I fucking
100%.
hate both of you.
So Vanessa Mello is quite limited, but she has proven to be really, really durable. I think she's only been stopped once in her 7 losses. And I see I see Rosa as this kind of high output striker. And I think given that Mello is quite content to strike and she's going to happily just sit there and waiting for a chance, I envision that she is probably just going to end up on the end of a lopsided 30-27.
I'm very disappointed by both of you.
I'm sorry.
So we will move on again to Sean's favorite. Sean, definitely not Sean. Jack's favorite linguistic battle.
Yeah, not mine.
Yeah,
sure, not
Jack.
mine.
If you want to just take over the whole fight, to be honest, I don't want anything to do with this poor gentleman's name.
Is this my boy Zalgas?
It is.
Oh, God. So basically, when I looked at Zalgas's record, yeah, I was aware of him because I'm one of those nerds who tunes into a lot of the Russian promotions when I'm bored, kids are asleep, and I'm trying to find something to do. So I was aware of his name, and when I looked into his record, I looked at his resume, and I thought, wow, what an excellent win streak to be entering into the UFC. He's got wins over former title contender Ali Bagatinov.
Yeah.
One of Khabib's main training partners and recent UFC signee, Tagir Ulanbekov. He's beaten Tyson Nam.
Yeah.
He's beaten Shaj Haq, who's like a UK MMA standout. And I was like, oh, this guy's going to be great. Like, this guy could be top 10 already. And then I watched the fights. And firstly, I was upset that he's basically just been in title fights for like the last like 6 or 7 fights. So every fight I watched, I had to endure 25 minutes. And then I was watching the fights, and then the same theme kept presenting itself. And it was like, did he actually win that fight? Now, there's been 2 examples of this I can speak to. There's been 2 examples of this. The Tagir Ulanbekov fight, and I'm not encouraging you all to watch this, although Tagir Ulanbekov is quite interesting. It's one of the worst decisions I've seen in MMA. Now, what baffled me
Allegedly
is what baffled me is Mr. Zalgas is from Kazakhstan, and he's fighting for a Russian promotion against a Russian fella. So I'm like, how on earth did he get fight nights to do the dirty on one of their own people? Right, that doesn't make any sense at all. And then I looked, and the event was hosted in Kazakhstan, which for me, just that's it. I understand what's happened now. But no,
my God.
Jumping into more of like a technical breakdown on Zalgas, right? He's like very compact. He's quite small. I think he's 5'5", so like similar to myself. Kickboxing background, very well-rounded. Can fight from both orthodox and southpaw, although predominantly orthodox. And he likes that kind of doing the Anthony Pettis thing, where he'll switch to southpaw to hit that rear body kick. Not loads of firepower, but he definitely can crack as well. But yeah, normally he's just a pressure fighter, likes pushing people back and kind of just outpacing them in predominantly kickboxing-oriented bouts. Takedown defense looks okay. He was taken down a bunch by Ali Bagatinov and Ulanbekov, who are both excellent wrestlers, so you can't look into that too much. But yeah, to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed when I was reviewing on tape on him, and I think his resume is definitely a little bit misleading. Rowley and Piver, on the other hand, I am a big fan of. He had a very, very unfortunate start to his UFC career. He dropped a very contentious decision against Kai Kara France.
Who's very good.
Who's very good, yeah. And most, if you look on MMA decisions, most of the media actually scored that for Piver. And considering that was pretty much an entirely striking bout, that's really, really impressive. He then fought little grappling powerhouse Honjario Bonsarin. Again, was doing really well in that matchup, and then just got an absolutely disgusting cut open up on his eyebrow, and that was called off early. And then thankfully, the UFC gave him another chance, and he completely whacked Mark De La Rosa last time out. So I think looking at their resumes, I think you would be inclined to think that Zhumagulov's going to probably take this. But honestly, I like Piver's. I really like Piver's boxing, especially his counterboxing as well. He's a lot taller. I think he's coming in at 5'9" or 5'8".
5'8", yeah. And your boy Zalgas, the prolific fighter that he is.
Yeah.
He's coming in at 5'4".
5'4", exactly. So he's even smaller than me. Like,
wow.
Think how crazy that is. So yeah, I think this is going to be a striking match. I think they'll both be happy to keep this on the feet. But I ultimately favour Piver's length, and I think that he's kind of I think he's going to be able to counter the punch and piece up Zalgas pretty well as he enters the pocket. And hopefully, there's not going to be a dodgy decision here as well. So I'll leave the rest to you guys.
Mate, I'm not sure I want to touch that fight with a fucking barge pole. Sean, do jump in, sir.
Well, I actually made a pretty similar mistake to Jack, to be honest. Probably even worse in some ways. So I also looked at the record and I was like, fuck, this guy's awesome. And then went and watched a YouTube highlight, which I realized as an analyst is just completely irresponsible on like every single level. And then after the YouTube highlight, I was like, oh my God, this guy is going to win a title. Like, he looks so fast, everything else. And then, yeah, I did the same as Jack and watched some of the full fights. And I was like, fuck, man, these are long. These are really, really long. But yeah, I think it should still be an interesting matchup. I'm probably edging towards Piver as well. He had a lovely knockout against Mark De La Rosa.
He whacked him, mate. He absolutely whacked him.
It was a certified whacking for sure, to steal some of Jack's terminology. But yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting one.
So Yeah, as I said, I'm not fucking touching that fight at the barge pole. But we will move on to two relatively certified fighters. We have Marcin Tybura, Europe's own, versus Maxim Grishin. I'm relatively excited about this fight. I think I've seen Marcin make a few leaps in his UFC tenure. When he came in, you know, he took some. He's had a mixed bag of the UFC. Like he lost his first fight for Tim Johnson, and then he went on a nice 3-fight win streak. Then, you know, he lost a decision to Verdum, got knocked out by Derek Lewis. Then he comes back and beats the skyscraper. And then it's kind of been a couple of knockouts and a decision win, right? Like Marcin, I think he's 34 at this point, which is nothing in heavyweight MMA. He's still 6'3", and he's still a fucking absolute monster. But Maxim Grishin is quite old in his UFC tenure. You know, it's 37 fights. This is going to be his 38th fight. He's been in the PFL for quite a long time. He's got, he's fucking handy with his striking. Half of his wins are knockouts, 6 submissions. He's good everywhere. He's coming off a couple of draws in his last sort of 4 to 5 fights. His UFC debut in Yars Island against Tybura. I kind of like Grishin here, to be honest. I like his style. I think Tybura is a bit slow, a bit ploddy, although he has made, as I said, he's made some improvements in his striking and his takedown defense. I think he's probably a little bit old for the game now. His last two losses have been bad knockouts. Getting knocked out by Augusto Sakai in under a minute is not something that you can be proud of, really. But I like Grishin here. I think he's a good fighter. He's very well rounded. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, to be honest. I think that just because of what you were saying about Marcin's sort of knockout losses, I'd probably want him to go more of a wrestling-centric game plan like he did against Sergey. Jesus, what's this dude's name? Yeah. I think I'd probably just edge for him to go more wrestling-wise because I don't have at heavyweight. I don't think he's the type of guy that can be trading a lot with these big dudes, to be honest.
I agree. Chin is very suspect.
Yeah.
Jack, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I would draw. So this match reminds me of when Marcin Tybura fought M1's light heavyweight champ Stephen Ploetz, who's this big German lad. Grishin's obviously traditionally a light heavyweight as well. And in that fight, we saw the kind of speed and the striking difference presented by Ploetz was a bit too much for Marcin Tybura. And basically, I think Marcin faded at the end of the second round and it was called off due to a doctor stoppage. So obviously, Grishin's coming in on short notice. If he's in good nick and he can push a pace, hopefully he'll be able to keep this standing and, force a similar kind of performance. I like Tybura, was really high on him before coming into the UFC, but he's definitely been a flop. And unfortunately, it looks like he's on the backside of his career now too.
I agree. We'll move on then to Leonardo Santos and Roman Bogatov. So Leonardo Santos 17-3 and Roman Bogatov with a very clean 10-0 record. Sean, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I think this has the potential to be a good fight. I think there's a big gulf in experience at UFC level. What I have watched of Roman Bogatov in M1 looks pretty promising. M1's obviously a promotion where they're fighting with a really strange hybrid between a cage and then like a boxing ring ropes. And he seems to have a sort of Dagestani wrestling style as well. So the fact that he's been able to work around those ropes sort of shows how good he is as a wrestler. He's very good at holding people down. And he's got quite a few nice submissions, usually like arm choke variations, whether it's like an arm triangle or like a Von Flue choke. He's had a couple of really nice ones. I just think against Leonardo Santos, there is a huge difference in experience. I think Leonardo Santos, for me, is a guy that he sort of lurks in the background a little bit, but he's had some wins that have aged really well. He's also had losses that have aged really well. It's pretty mad that on the Tough 18 Brazil that he came up on, He fought against Thiago Santos on there and just completely dominated him for 3 rounds. He lost like a decision to Ponzinibbio, but this guy's been against some of the best prospects from the start. He's obviously had a really nice knockout against Kevin Lee when Kevin Lee was on the rise. And just absolutely, against Steel Jack's turn, absolutely whacked Stevie Ray.
Yeah.
You know, which kind of killed me inside a little bit. I
That
think,
was a certified whacking.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, for me, from a technical perspective, this basically revolves around if Roman can close the distance and take Leonardo down. I think him transferring to not only a smaller cage, but just actually having fencing instead of ropes is only going to help his style. But, you know, Leonardo, he's shown really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, really good sort of takedown defense as well. And I just think he's just more of a wily sort of veteran, to be honest, to get this one. What Roman Bagatov doesn't want to do is stay at that middle range and not just try and smother the right hand. Because as you've seen in the Stevie Ray one, trying to pick off Leo Santos from a distance like Kevin Lee tried or Stevie Ray tried is a recipe for disaster because he's got a very sneaky counter right hand.
Jack, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the big question for me is just is Leo Santos shot right? I don't think we've seen anything that indicates that he is physically, but he is 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no clue he was 40. Jesus.
Yeah, he's been having long layoffs in between his fights as well. I actually think this is one of the quicker turnarounds for him in recent memory. From what I've seen, I think Santos will be definitely the better striker. I think that he's always been one of the best grapplers kind of in that division. And I think by Bogatov looking to take him down, I think we'll actually play into Leo's wheelhouse. This is a guy who, if you guys remember, flying armbar GFC at ADC back in the day. But yeah, I think Bogatov's route to victory is definitely taking down and kind of controlling from top position. But I think if this is the Leo Santos that we've seen in these past couple of performances, I think he's a savvy enough there and he has enough tools to definitely win this. But again, he's 40 years old. I feel like this is the kind of performance where he could just suddenly drop off. So I think it's a pretty tough fight to call, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think you guys will hit the nails on the head, to be honest. We'll move on to Makwan Ameikani versus Danny Henry. I think this is a really good fight for the European fans. I think this is something that I'm quite excited about. I really like both fighters. I think Danny Henry's been really impressive for me in his UFC tenure. He came in and his first fight was against Daniel Tamer, which is no joke, and he won that by decision. He then came up against the Canadian/Irish Hakeem Dawodu and had that beautiful guillotine finish. He jumped on a guillotine from a takedown and rolled and just cinched that shit up so tight and eventually got the finish, and that was absolutely phenomenal. He then had a massive step up against Dan Ige, whatever. And he lost that by a rear naked choke. But as we've seen, Dan Ige then, has had recent wins over Barboza and guys like that. So clearly that's a fight that will age well. Makwan, on the other hand, has had quite a long and storied UFC career at this point. 5 years in the UFC, and his only losses are to Shane Burgos, which, I mean, Jesus, if anyone watched Shane Burgos, Josh Emmett, then you know what kind of fighter Shane Burgos is, and he lost to Arnold Allen on a very close split decision. For me, what we've got here is we've got Danny Henry, who's very tall, very long. He's coming in at 6'1"-ish, and Makwan is obviously also quite a long guy, but Danny is a well-rounded guy. 5 TKOs, 5 submissions. He fights long. He uses his range well, whereas Makwan wants to get up and close. He wants to put you against the fence. He wants to take you down. And he wants to ground and pound you there. I think that the thing that I struggle with here for Makwan is he showed that he gassed very hard against Shane Burgos. He took Shane down in the first round, and he used all of his energy to get him there. And when Shane survived, when he got to his feet, when he was landing shots from the bottom, Makwan seemed not to have much of an answer for that. And obviously Shane Burgos' boxing and his attacking prowess is phenomenal. He was working his body really well. He was circling the cage really well. He was just demolishing Makwan in the striking ranges. And when it got to sort of the mid of the second round, there was nothing there for Makwan. So I think if Danny Henry his route to victory here is to work the body and to stop Makwan getting a takedown. And obviously, if he can take Makwan down, which is, no mean feat in itself, then he should be doing that. I do, however, pick Makwan in this fight, and we'll get to picks later, I guess. But I do pick Makwan. I think he's more experienced, and I think he has the ability to hurt Danny. And with 10 submissions on his record, if it does get to the ground, I would favor Makwan here. Jack, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the game plan for both is fairly clear, right? Makwan doesn't tend to change his game plan on a fight-by-fight basis. It's very simple. Blitz forward at the start of the fight, try and catch him off guard on the feet, and get working on his wrestling as soon as possible in the hopes of wrapping up a choke, right? Danny Henry, I feel like the tricky thing here, right, is kind of gauging how good Danny Henry's grappling is. Obviously, he got cleaned out pretty quickly against Dan Ige, but then we know Dan Ige's elite, right? And then other than that, it's kind of difficult to gauge. The other two opponents he fought in the UFC have been predominantly strikers. I think, I agree with you, Harry. It's definitely going to be key for Danny Henry to kind of survive the early exchanges and kind of look to take Amirkhani down, take him out down the distance. But Amirkhani's, I think he's fought and beaten kind of better level of opposition than Danny Henry already.
I agree.
He's been competitive with guys like Arnold Allen. So I have a hard time picking Danny Henry in this one.
I agree with that too, Sean.
Yeah, I think the key to victory here is composure, and probably from both guys, but especially Danny Henry. I think he has this thing where he'll throw himself straight into the fire in almost every fight that he has. So it's either a war that he comes back and wins, or he subs someone really quick, or Danny Ige just runs him over. I think he could do with taking a leaf out of Arnold Allen's book. As the only UK guy that's beaten Makwan in the UFC, and something Arnold did really well was just he stayed very composed in bad positions. He made all the right decisions. He didn't give up any submissions, the same way that other fighters like Chris Fishgold have against Makwan and Amirkhani. And I think if he goes in with that sort of a game plan, I think he's got a better chance. But for me, I think that Makwan's probably going to win this with wrestling fairly easily.
I think so too. I mean, just to give a small shout out to Arnold Allen, Arnold Allen had essentially a big turnaround in his career. If you look at his fights against Alan Omer, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Yoatsin Meza, and then against Makwan Amirkhani and against Mads Bennell, he was getting pieced up against Mads Bennell. He was losing that fight, and he came out with that amazing guillotine choke against the fence. If you then look at his 3 fights against Rinaldi, Melendez, and Lentz, that's a different fighter. It's a different fighter. He is calm. He's relaxed. He picks his shots. He's calculated. He's just a far, far superior fighter from the ones that we saw in his first sort of 4 or 5 fights in the UFC. And I think Danny Henry needs that same maturing in that, Danny Ige, elite fighter, fine. But in the Hakim Dawodu fight, he took shots. He won a war against Dan Tamer. As you're saying, I agree with you. This guy, he's in the UFC now, so he needs to fight like a UFC fighter. But we will, as clearly you guys have nothing to say on that, we will move on. And we'll move on to probably what's going to be the fight of the night, right? Zaleski dos Santos is never, ever, ever in a boring fight. And we have arguably one of the greatest nicknames in the game, which is the King of Kung Fu, Muslim Salikov. Look, I mean, we could break down this technically, but really there's not much to say. Muslim Salikov is a far more calculated fighter, but he will throw the kitchen sink at you. He'll throw every spinning kick there is in the book. He's calculated, he's calm, he's relaxed with his striking. He put Nordin Taleb away in a round. He put Ricky Rainey away in 2 rounds. He won a decision against Loreno Starpoli just outside of the UFC, which it saddens me a little bit. But he spinning hook kicked Melvin Gallard into his next stratosphere. I thought that was quite sad, but these things.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, Marvin Gallard. But this guy is, he's a violence fighter, and I don't say that often, but he likes to throw things with really bad intentions. And Alessio Zaleski dos Santos is exactly the same. This motherfucker wants to get you out there from the first bell, and whether it's going to be a fucking flying knee against Benderami, whether it's going to be Sean Strickland, a fucking wheel kick and punches to finish it up, whether he's going to take you down and submit you like he did to Curtis Melander, he wants to put you out. And this is just going to be a fun, really fast-paced, back and forth fight for me. Sean, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with loads of that. I think Dos Santos kind of reminds me of like a bit of an Eric Silver type dude in the sense that
he's just a mad bastard.
He's mental. He just hurls his limbs around in as many crazy ways as you can think. And sometimes, you get the sort of Sean Strickland thing where he lands, and even he seems kind of surprised that he made contact. I think Salikov, on the other hand, I think you're right, is a lot more calculated. He actually has that thing that we've spoken about before, that people like Mark Hunt or Rosenstruck or guys with extensive kickboxing experience have, where that guy has a real sense of his own power. And in one sense, it's good because, you get these knockouts against Nordine Taleb where you can tell he knows that the fight's done before the ref's even called it. He's walking away.
It's disgusting.
But I think, poor Taleb, I think he's still in there. I think he's still in that arena. But yeah, I think the issue that comes with that is that they become so confident in their power. And Rosenstruck is another example of this, where they don't have the same urgency to get up a high strike rate and stuff, because it's always in the back of their mind, like, I could finish this at any moment, But yeah, I'm really interested in this. I think that Muslim is probably going to sleep Dos Santos, but
I think so too.
It's very fun. I
think so too. I think what's going to happen, and before I'll get to Jack in a second, I think what's going to happen is Dos Santos is going to do what Dos Santos does, and he's going to essentially windmill a guy down with various different limbs. I mean, look, he's a mad fucking bastard. What else do you want me to say? This is why I don't see any point in breaking this down technically, because I'm not sure Dos Santos knows what he's doing when he's in there. So what the fuck am I supposed to say he's doing? But yeah, Muslim Salikov is the same, but he's so much more calculated. He's so much more composed, and he knows the strikes that he's going to throw when he throws them. And yeah, I think that what you're going to see is you're going to see a mad bastard versus a superior striker. And I think that he's probably going to get slept at some point with something. But then look, Alessio Dos Santos may just take him down and choke him. Who fucking knows? But yeah, Jack, tell me.
Yeah, like you guys, I'm looking forward to the fucknuttery that this fight is going to produce. I think we can definitely hope for. I think this is probably the best chance we have of a simultaneous wheel kick double knockout, which is obviously every MMA fan's dream. And yeah, it's just a great fun fight, right? Even if you look at their nicknames, they both have their kind of base martial arts as their nicknames. Zaleski's obviously Capoeira, Mr. Kung Fu obviously, Muslim Salikov. I would actually quite like them just to engage in a strictly style clash where we have Kung Fu versus Capoeira. But no, on a more serious note, I agree with you guys. I think that Salikov's boxing and defense seems a little bit tighter. And I think that's where he's going to be able to get to Zaleski. The X factor here is Salikov's grappling. It looked really, really bad when Alex Garcia took him down and kind of swiftly choked him out. And Zaleski's shown kind of flashes of having a decent submission threat on the mat as well. But yeah. Definitely looking forward.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think if we are to put a relatively technical game plan together here, Dos Santos is going to go in and he's going to do what he wants, right? He's the Johnny Walker of that division. He goes in, he throws mad shit, and something happens. He either wins or he gets knocked the fuck out. I think for Muslim Salikov, what would be really intelligent is he's got an amazing turning side kick, right? Beautiful turning side kick. Invest in that in the body, invest in the leg kicks, and then see what happens. And if you can throw a fucking wheel kick and knock somebody out, then let's do it. Fuck it, let's have some fun. We'll move on now. So, I mean, the card really picks up from here. I mean, fuck the Ozdemir Prochazka fight, but other than that, the card really picks up from here. So we now have Paige Van Zandt versus Amanda Ribas, which is an absolute banger of a
Whoa,
fight.
whoa. Are we not touching Ozdemir, Jiri Prochaska?
Yeah, Paige Van Zandt Rebus first.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
Chill your
calm down.
fucking beans, son. Sit in your hammock and relax. Sean, take us away. Paige Van Zandt Rebus. What a fucking fight this is.
Yeah, this is a really, really good fight. I've actually really enjoyed going back and looking through.
I bet you have, you
Rebus's
fucking
past
dirty
fight.
bastard.
You know what I'm like, Carrie. You know what I'm like. But yeah,
Absolute filth.
She looks really, really good as a
I
fighter.
bet she does.
As a fighter.
Yeah. You prick.
But yeah, she has that sort of Whitman-like style. She has a really nice jab that she works behind. And her striking seems good. It's not like what you see a lot of in, to be fair, probably more in the lower sort of weight divisions where they're almost just throwing strikes at each other to score points and then sort of nothing beyond that. She has a super nice top game. And something that really impressed me with her against Mackenzie Dern was sort of the way that she just handled that grappling problem. Like, I think it says a lot about an MMA fighter when they're against someone who's on paper has a lot of grappling accolades and then goes in, keeps their composure, and just shuts them down, which is essentially what she did. She hit a lovely Uchimata against Mackenzie Dern. And whenever I see that in ladies MMA, those sort of throws specifically, it fills me with more confidence than I have with someone like Paige Van Zandt, who goes for that headlock throw, which I swear to God, every time I see someone go for that headlock throw, a little part of me dies, Harry. Like, a little part of me is just lost.
I feel
forever.
physically sick. Like, it is absolutely one of the grossest elements of MMA.
The only person that picks that out and actually does it successfully is Michelle Watson.
I'm still not sure. I don't
like
think you
like
can
it.
do something like that successfully. Like, you can't make
Polishing
a
a turd
successfully. Yeah, that's the expression I was looking for. But yeah, like, I think Paige Van Zandt is a decent competitor. I think she's going to be outsized here as well, though, with Amanda dropping down to strawweight. And to be honest, Amanda looked pretty physical when she was against larger fighters like Mackenzie Dern anyway. I think Paige's sort of style in general centers around a few wild techniques. And when she gets them, like the scissor kick against Beck Rawlins, everyone loses the shit and it's great. And it was great. It was really cool. But then the issue is you've got to watch another 3 fights after that where Paige's sort of runs and does this weird gallop, but then, you know, she knows she's hit that once in a lifetime kick once and then she never sort of hits it again. I think this is going to be a clear sort of win for Amanda Rebus. To be honest, I think the biggest difference between the two fighters is that Paige has a lot of flash, but there isn't much actual substance behind the techniques that she uses. If she goes for that headlock throw, not only will I be like unbelievably depressed, but I think against someone like Amanda, this is a new wave of women or female fighters coming up. You can't make those sort of mistakes against people of that caliber. Amanda's fought on EBI as well. She has a really nice guard. If you look in the Randa Marcos fight, the one time she did get taken down, she not only reversed it, but Randa Marcos was trying to go for a heel hook and she just shut that shit just down straight away, basically. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a clear win for Amanda. And yeah, I think hopefully for Paige, it's sort of a lesson about, you know, using techniques that are quite flashy but don't have a great deal of substance. But, you know, Paige's games, they come as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my point.
Yeah, even in the Rachel Ostovich fight, which should be a red light in itself because she was, you know, getting pretty badly smashed before she sort of turned it around. She is super game, and you know, she can turn it around, and she's got great killer instinct. That I was talking about before the other ladies were lacking. I think it's going to be a fun one though, like you say, either way. But I just think Amanda Rebus is head and shoulders above her as a fighter. I
agree. I think one thing that we do forget though with Paige is she's actually still really fresh in her MMA career. She's only had 12 fights, right? And of the losses that she's picked up outside of Tisha Torres way back in the day in 2013, Rose Namajunas, there's no harm in losing to Rose Namajunas. Michelle Waterson, I don't really think there's any harm in losing to Michelle Waterson either. The Jessica Rose Clark, she broke her arm in round 1, right? Like, you know, to still be in there and go to a decision after having the arm break that we've seen plague her since, right? She's broke it twice again in camp leading up to fights. Like, look, I think that Paige is extremely game. Now, of course, if what we're saying here is one of her main attributes to win fights is that she's game, then that's a red flag. I agree, and I do agree that Amanda Ribas is a superior fighter. She's far more technical. She's got power in her hands. I don't think we should count out Paige for anything, because look, if Amanda Ribas does, for whatever reason, give up something, then Paige will, as you've said, will take it. She has an extremely good killer instinct. And yeah, I mean, the thing I have for Paige is obviously she's moved camp now. She's moved away from Team Alpha Male. She's moved to a different gym. I wonder whether the will to fight is still there. And I mean that because she's talked quite vocally about her pay. She's talked quite vocally about how she's making more money from Instagram. She's making more money from TV shows like Dancing with the Stars, all of this sort of stuff. She's quite clearly a personality in the social realm. I just wonder whether the same drive is there to fight, the same drive that Amanda Ribas does definitely have, right? Jack, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, unlike you, Harry, I'm definitely going to go on record and say I'm counting Paige Van Zandt out of this. I think that given that she's been so vocal about testing the free agency market, yeah, I think that Sean Shelby has carefully picked this fight. And there's a reason why Amanda Ribas is the biggest favourite on the card, right? I really struggled to see a path to victory for Paige Van Zandt and her glass forearm here.
Wow. Fuck me. Glass forearm.
Glass
that is
forearm.
so fucking rude. Jesus. Mate.
Think about this matchup. I could have said far worse.
Mate, you could have, and so could I. And it was on the tip of my tongue when fucking Sean was talking, but I didn't. I think the rule of thumb from next is that we have to do early morning podcasts, because Jack just fucking Jack, you have to be in the hammock and you have to be spitting flames. This is absolutely ridiculous. We will swiftly move on before Jack shit talks Paige Van Zandt anymore. So we're going to move on to Volkan Ozdemir versus Yuri Prochazka. Jack, take us away.
So I'm looking forward to this.
Fuck this.
I would say I do like the finer things in MMA. I like a well-executed game plan and an underdog win, like Volkanovski, Holloway, for example. But I do also just like just silly violence. And I think if you look at Yuri's career in Ryzen, where he's been their poster boy alongside Horiguchi, that's kind of what he brings, right? I don't think I can't see him having too much success in the UFC. He's very aggressive. He's tall. He's quite a powerful kickboxer. His takedown defense has improved a little bit over his tenure at Ryzen, primarily because they've fed him on a steady diet of wrestlers like Albrechtson, King Mo, Brandon Halsey, and most recently CB Dollaway. But I think the big thing for me with Prochazka is he's very, very hittable. He keeps his hands low. He's very heavy on his lead leg. Yeah. And it tends to kind of lean forward into a lot of his punches. So when we saw King Mo face plant him in Ryzen, it was exactly for that reason. He was far too aggressive and got punished for it. I actually think that Volkan has made quite significant improvements over the past couple of years. We saw against Dominic Reyes that he now has kind of offensive wrestling that he can go to, which could be a nice one to break up the pace of this fight. He's always been pretty good counter puncher. And against Alexander Rakic as well, he had excellent low kicks. One thing I noticed in the very short fight with CB Dollaway is that CB Dollaway only landed about 4 leg kicks, right? And he's definitely not someone who has a reputation of being a decent leg kicker, really. And you could see that it was already starting to mess with Yuri just before the knockout. So I think this is a really, really rough matchup for your UFC debut. I think that it could be fun, especially if Yuri can get out the early exchanges without being too disabled. But ultimately, yeah, I find it very, very hard to pick.
So Jack has muted himself relatively early in finishing his own sentence. I'll finish his sentence for him. And that is that he finds it very difficult to pick outside of Volkan Ozdemir. For me, yeah, I mean, if we look at if we look at Yuri Prochazka's record, CB Dollaway is at the tail end of his career. Fabio Maldonado should not be fighting in 2019. He should not be
Yes, he
fighting
should.
in
He's the
2019.
he's the lineal greatest heavyweight of all time.
Mate, you need to. Mate,
He's got another run.
I'm gonna come to your fucking house and tip over that hammock in a minute. You need to relax. Muhammad Lawal, 2019, should not be fighting. Brandon Halsey, I mean, yeah, whatever. I think the most impressive win is Carl Albrechtsen. Like, that guy is supposed to be, you know, a solid fighter, 26 and whatever. But even if he was thrown to the wolves, right? Fucking Yuri Prochazka, and then most recently Phil Davis. Like, Jesus Christ. But, you know, I think you're right. I think Ozdemir at the beginning of his career was basically, if he couldn't get you out of there in the first minute, then he wasn't going to get you out of there at all, and he was probably going to lose, right? But now he's a bit more well-rounded. The fight with Anthony Smith was a decent fight until he got choked out. Dominic Reyes, as you say, he showed, you know, some well-roundedness. Alexander Rakic showed some good leg kicks. I can see Volkan finishing Yuri relatively quickly in this one. Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with the gist of what you both said. I think it's such a rough first matchup in the UFC. I think Volkan, even though, you know, he's obviously not the perfect MMA fighter by any means, like he's got the rub of people like Daniel Cormier, you know, in title fights. Like he's basically been everywhere you can be in the UFC, and I think that's gonna show, to be honest.
I agree. So we'll move on now to one of three absolutely phenomenal title fights. This, to me, is obviously what makes the card. This first fight, Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas, features one of my favorite fighters of all time in Rose Namajunas. This is a rematch, and as we know, you know, Rose lost this by essentially getting slammed on her own neck for holding onto a Kimura for a little bit too long. To me, this fight wasn't close the first time, and I can't see how it's going to be close the second time. I can't say too many good things about Rose, to be honest. When Rose first started fighting, she was literally just a jiu-jitsu fighter, flying arm bars, rear naked chokes, flying triangles, this kind of thing. But since she's been with Trevor Whitman, and you've really seen her flourish into just an absolutely phenomenal fighter. She's calculated. Her boxing is great. She's got power. Her footwork is absolutely phenomenal. She's got good takedown defense. She's got good takedown offense when she wants it. Her jiu-jitsu is obviously great. She's just a really, really phenomenal all-round fighter. Jessica Andrade, however, is, and neither of you are going to like this, but she is the Hands of Stone of female MMA.
Oh God, blasphemy!
She is. No, she is. She's Lady.
She is Lady Lineker, and look, like, if what she does is she plods forward in a straight line and she chases you, and she's going to try and throw really big shots at you, and if she doesn't put you away, then she's going to lose a decision, or she's going to get finished herself. You know,
or she's going to slam you on your head.
Yeah, just fucking sit in your hammock and be quiet for now. Like, if we look at her finishes, right? She's been finished by a triangle via Marion Renault. Raquel Pennington finished her with a rear naked choke. Now, the fight that I was actually fortunate enough to see was she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk, UFC 211, Miocic versus Dos Santos 2. And basically what happened was she chased Joanna around the ring for 3 rounds, and Joanna just outpointed her with really clean jabs, really clean rights, really clean, you know, teeps and these sorts of things. And I think Rose can do the same thing. I think Rose is a better striker than Joanna going forward anyway. I think we saw that in both of Rose's fights against Joanna. But look, I mean, the game plan is relatively simple here. Stay away from Jessica's blitzes. which Rose is well able to do with her superior footwork. Don't hold on to any fucking Kimuras for too long, which Rose is also able to do. And just pick her off because she's really hittable. I think Rose's 8-4 record is absolutely ridiculous in comparison to the fighter that she is. But I mean, that's my call on that. Jack, do you have anything else?
No, I completely agree with you here. I thought Rose looked really, really good in the first fight up until the point of her getting slam dunked. I think that for her, she probably needs to be like, I thought her being measured the first time was a good approach. But I actually think that potentially being a little bit more aggressive and looking to blitz Jess, like Weili Zhang did, might actually get enable her to pick up a win a little bit quicker. But yeah, I think that it's a good matchup for Rose. She learnt her lesson the first time, and I expect it to come.
Sean?
Yeah, I think obviously with any rematch, you want to go back and see, what positions you sort of lost in, and different to the Max Holloway and Volkanovski fight that we're going to get into in a bit. This fight literally came down to one mistake in one position that was made twice. It's a very easily rectifiable mistake. It's a very similar thing. Another fighter that does this is Corey Sandhagen, where essentially fighters will get them in a high crotch and then they'll go for the Kimura. But the issue with that is while going for the sub, you attach yourself and your hips to the person trying to lift you up. So the mad thing with that fight is that she actually gets slammed with that high crotch slam once before, doesn't get knocked out, and then tries the same thing again. But it's a super high risk move. I think all she really needs to do is take a leaf out of Joanna Jędrzejczyk's book, who essentially, instead of going for any subs, when Andrade went for that high crotch, she was just weaving a shin to the outside of the leg. Because even though Andrade is so strong, she's still lifting her up. But because of that outside sort of shin position, if you go back and watch it, she could never actually slam Joanna on her head or finish the takedowns. And then, that just exhausts her more. So I think it's a pretty easy fix for a win, to be honest. I think it's more a blip than anything else in Rose's career.
I agree.
What I think should just happen from now is Rose rectifies that, she wins this fight, and then we just put Andrade versus Meatball Molly and just have it as a fight night main event or something. Then I'm all good. That's my sort of matchmaking done then.
I think that's a really bad fight for Meatball Molly. And I think that because Jessica Andrade has some real power. Molly doesn't seem to have the same sort of power. And Jessica is more than happy to stand and bang, the same way that Meatball is happy to stand and bang. I think and Meatball Molly is still very, very soon in her MMA career, very young in her MMA career. I think Jessica Andrade is a couple of levels above Meatball. Meatball has a little bit better fundamental boxing and has a little bit better footwork, I would say. But Jessica has absolute serious power. And
you're missing one key thing here, Harry.
She's a Scouser. She don't get knocked out.
She's a Scouser.
She don't get knocked out.
Scousers don't get knocked out, mate. So that's it. Everything you just said.
Harry.
Yeah, Paddy did tell us. You're right. Paddy did tell us. But yeah, look, I mean, I think the key as well to Jessica Andrade is what we saw in the Weili Zhang fight. And this is the last thing I'll say on this. The Weili Zhang fight, Jessica tried to blitz her. She tried to plod forward, and Weili Zhang was like, cool, bro, let me just absolutely fucking destroy you with these knees and punches. So that was, in Jack's words, a certified whacking. And whilst I can't see a certified whacking necessarily, I can see Rose TKOing her here. I really can. So we will move on to this is just an absolutely amazing fight. An absolutely amazing fight. Piotr Jan versus Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo dropping down a weight class from featherweight to bantamweight to meet his nickname is No Mercy, and Jesus Christ, he's a scary fucker, this guy. He is a scary fucker. Sean, tell me your thoughts on Piotr Jan, Jose Aldo.
Yeah, I think when you listen to interviews with Peter Yan, I think I'd have to agree with you. It doesn't seem like he has a single ounce of human emotion. Like, he is the most terrifying little person that I think I've ever seen interviewed. But yeah, in terms of this fight, this is my personal favorite on the whole card, to be honest. Not
I agree.
just because it's two great fighters coming together, but I think the exact time that they've met in their careers and where they're both at in their careers is what makes it all the more interesting for me personally. So if you sort of start with Jose Aldo, I think obviously he's reinventing himself in the sense that he's moving down a weight class to bantamweight. But I also think that over the last couple of years, stylistically, he's reinvented himself in a lot of other ways as well. Some of them not ideal, like the leg kicks have obviously sort of faded out and sort of vanished from his game, which were a really big part.
So
But
upsetting.
after the McGregor fight, he's sort of done a lot of work on his boxing. He's actually worked with a really, really famous boxing coach, Robert Garcia, who's sort of famous for training some of the best Mexican boxers, arguably like the last sort of decade, and Benito Donaire, and he's brothers with Mikey Garcia, who's in the pound-for-pound rankings at the moment. And I think that sort of, I don't know how much he's working with him, but I think I've definitely seen in his more recent fights with Marlon Moraes, and also featherweight,
Volkanovski?
Renato Moicano.
Renato Moicano.
I think that there's parts of that Mexican boxing style that are really nicely seeped in with what he already had, which he always had a nice sort of liver shot, in the way that it's sort of fitting with his Muay Thai. But now he's sort of mixed it in with really nice sort of forward pressure, footwork, which is very typical in Mexican boxing. He works behind a jab, and now he has a lovely like pull right hand counter as well, which you saw him put to good use against Moraes and Moicano. And for that reason, obviously he's become a bit more boxing centric. This is what I mean in terms of they've clashed at a great time, because Petr Yan brings the Eastern European style of boxing. I think he's one of the first fighters who's brought that brand of boxing into the UFC. And he does a couple of things that are really interesting. Something very typical of pressure, like Russian boxers, is they've got very sort of educated feet. So to the sort of untrained eye, you may look at Petr Yan and think that he's very sort of wooden and he doesn't move his head much. But a big reason for that is he puts himself into really good positions with his feet, so that he doesn't have to move his head in such an exaggerated way in the same way someone like Jose Aldo does have to when he's in the pocket. One nice technique that Petr Yan does that comes directly from that Russian pressure boxing style is his sort of shifting right hand. So for anyone listening, if he's in an orthodox stance, he'll throw a big right hand, he'll deliberately overextend and then step through into southpaw instead of staying off balance. And then when he's there, because the fighters sort of jumped away frantically to get away from the right hand, they've also surrendered that outside foot position when he changes. It's the same shot you got Jimmy Rivera with. It's the same combination that you hit Uriah Faber with. And that is a huge part of these sort of Eastern European pressure boxer style. I think Gennady Golovkin is probably the best example people can see today of someone that has brought that shifting Eastern European style and put it to really good use in sort of boxing matches. If there is anyone that nerds out over boxing, there's another guy called Artur Beterbiev, who's sort of rising the ranks at the moment. Yeah. And he uses the same shifting right hand, which is absolutely beautiful. So from a technical perspective, as you can probably tell, I'm pretty invested in this one.
Me too.
But for that reason, where they are, I'm so interested how these guys are going to end up clashing, how those two schools of boxing are going to end up clashing. But I think for Aldo, with all that said, he almost needs to bring back some of the things from the old Aldo style to win this. I don't think exchanging with Petr Yan is a good decision for anyone, even though Aldo will be the bigger man. And I think that especially Aldo's leg kick, if there was ever a time for it to come back, I know there's a lot of conflicting theories as to why that leg kick sort of vanished. But if there's a time to bring that leg kick back, it's now, because you've got to take away Peter's stance. Otherwise, he's going to murk you.
Yeah. Jack, before I dive in, have you got anything?
So I'm not going to jump into anything stylistic here because Sean has absolutely just decimated that matchup and left us with not much to go on, to be honest. I'm just picking at bones here. Now, one thing that I saw that was interesting in the build-up to this is former Bellator champ Eduardo Dantas, obviously a training partner of Jose Aldo, was interviewed regarding this matchup and actually sent in some pictures of when Petr Yan was in Rio training at Nova União. And he was asked about kind of how that sparring went. Obviously, Petr Yan at the time was yet to be signed to the UFC. I don't think Aldo was still champion, but he's obviously still, do you know what I mean, top of his game. And by all accounts, Aldo picked him off and kind of had his way with him. I think the key thing for this matchup is really timing. As we've seen in the Holloway fights, I can't really trust Aldo to go kind of more than 3 rounds, really. I think for an Aldo to win, he's going to have to fight the perfect fight for 5 rounds. Yan is obviously extremely dangerous, pushes an excellent pace, and he's a bit like a snowball in there, right? He gets more aggressive and kind of more dangerous as the fight wears on. And at this point in Aldo's career, can he survive 25 minutes with Petr Yan? My guess is going to be no.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to add was that what we have is a current MMA Hall of Famer, one of the greatest of all time at featherweight, if not the greatest of all time at featherweight. Against a rising legend at bantamweight. Right, that's essentially what we have, and I agree that Jose is actually he's like an anti-snowball. Right, his first round is amazing, absolutely amazing, and then generally he'll be good in the third, and if it's a 5-round fight, he'll take round 3 off, and then he'll come back in the 4th and 5th. Right, he'll just have a seat in the 3rd, have a cuppa, read the paper, take a few shots, and then 4th and 5th, he'll come back, right? But Petr Yan's not like that. Round 1, he might be slower, but 2, 3, 4, and then in 5, you've got a full steam ahead Russian train coming at you, and if you're not careful, he's going to run you over. And whilst I entirely agree with Sean that leg kicks would pay absolute dividends here. Jose Aldo's leg kicks are some of the best I've ever seen in MMA. That I just can't see that happening. And I think this is a fight that I'm kind of sad to see, because you talk about timing. I'd like to see this fight 3 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe, when Jose Aldo hadn't taken the beatings off Max Holloway. He hadn't been knocked out by McGregor, and he was the Jose Aldo, right? But we are where we are. I think, as I said, we'll get to picks at the very end, but I think this is an amazing fight that Petr Yan should really get through. So we'll now move on to the current main event. We don't know yet whether Masvidal will take this fight or not, but Volkanovski versus Holloway. Jack, live up to Sean and give us your technical analysis.
I'm going to start this breakdown with an apology, because I am going to be able to offer nowhere near the level of analysis that Sean just provided. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I alluded to this earlier when we was breaking down one of the other matchups, that Volkanovski's first performance was completely immaculate. Like that was for me up there with one of the best performances of all time in a title fight, alongside your Dillashaw Barao, alongside your Santos Pettis. I mean, it was, and a lot of that was down to his defense, right? He consistently feinted throughout, and then obviously was brutalizing Max's lead leg with a calf kick, which obviously meant that the reach disadvantage was mitigated. That then disabled Max's lead leg, stunting his offense, and then he ultimately was forced to fight the majority of the contest in southpaw, right, which is obviously not his normal stance. So it was just an excellent game plan executed by Volkanovski. The question here, and Eugene Behrman, Volkanovski's coach, has already mentioned this in interviews, is kind of what does Max do next, right? Like, there hasn't been enough time in between the fights for Max to completely revamp his style. By all accounts, and from the interview that was posted the other day, Max for this fight has been training with Zoom classes.
Yeah, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this right fucking now. What the fuck? If this is true, I messaged Sean instantly about this. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? How can you be going into a UFC title fight, the biggest fight of your career, to win your title back, without training with anyone?
It's insane. And And it's also a case of sorry, Sean, I'll let you jump in there in a second.
No, it's all right.
It's so crazy, and if anything, like if this was Max Holloway before the Volkanovski fight, right, and he's had all this success with this style, and all he needs to do is really just kind of fine tune things and make sure his cardio is on point. I still won't advise it, but I get it. But this is a fight where he definitely needs to change up a lot, and he's doing remote training on Zoom. For me, that just that completely boggles me.
Sean.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, like, you know, we've done some podcasts. We meet up. We talk about fighting. You know, in time to time, I'll even go into my room and I'll do some shadow boxing. You know, am I ready for a fight next week? No, don't put me into a fight, you know, at the weekend. That's just completely insane. And I think it just draws more attention, this whole situation, to what a great cornering decision Mike Perry made at the weekend.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I just think at the moment we just have to accept that Mike Perry saw something clearly, that instead of Zoom meetings, he essentially employed someone with zero experience close to him. And once again, Mike Perry has come out of this looking like a genius. And Harry, I know you're going to try and get through this podcast without giving that man his due at the weekend, but that guy has revolutionized the corner game. He has changed it completely. But that is my piece. I couldn't get to the end of this podcast, Harry, without you giving Mike Perry his dues that he deserves.
I've now muted Sean, just so that everyone is aware. Fuck that. No, I mean, look, I think that yeah, look, the Holloway thing is if true, is crazy, but I just can't see it. I just can't see that Holloway would not see that this is a crazy idea to go into a second fight with Alexander Volkanovski, where the first one was so masterful, right? You know, I think Eugene Berman is an amazing coach, and Max has a great team around him as well. And this is why I really love this fight, is they're two great fighters, two great teams, and they're coming back together. But look, Volkanovski, as Jack broke down earlier, Volkanovski beat Max at his own game. He took away his range, he took away his footwork, and he beat him to the punches. He beat him to the combinations, and he outpointed him, out-combinationed the combination fighter. And Max needs to sit with a game plan and work out how he's going to get around that. Like, you know, you hear about at Jackson Wink, for instance, there's a boardroom full of people, and they're going and they're watching tape for John Jones's fights. They're all watching tape. They're all game planning. They're all putting together a plan. They're all trying to break down this fighter from their various different specialities. Izzy Martinez will do the wrestling. You know, the jiu-jitsu coach will do the jiu-jitsu stuff. Jackson Wink will do, you know, those guys will do the striking stuff. And that is, at this high level, that's what you need, right? You need a way to break down Volkanovski. You need a team behind you that are going to find out what the weaknesses is. Now, bearing in mind, Volkanovski has only lost once, and his loss was in 2013, 7 fucking years ago. And that was, you know, okay, he got head kicked and finished with punches afterwards. But man, you look at the run that he's had since then, right? In the UFC alone, he's knocked out 1, 2, 3 guys. He's fucking decision Darren the Damage Elkins and put some damage on him. He's got a win over an absolute legend in Jose Aldo. Smashed up Jeremy Kennedy. Like, he's absolutely no joke. And we obviously look at Max Holloway. Do you know a crazy stat about Max Holloway that I always forget? How many fights, without looking at his record, how many fights did Max Holloway have before he entered the UFC? Can anyone tell me?
4.
So Jack's gone 4. Sean?
5.
He had 3 professional fights, 1 amateur fight. 3. 3 professional fights, and they throw him in the UFC. Do you know who his UFC debut was? Dustin Poirier. Fucking Dustin Poirier.
Seriously though, whoever did the scouting report on Max Holloway was fucking excellent, right? To pick someone out like that after 3 fights.
And sorry, Jack, you're absolutely
earning your
right.
money there.
You're absolutely right. It is actually 4 fights. It is 4 fights. He had 3 fights in X1 promotion and 1 fight in UIC. And Jesus Christ, Dustin Poirier for your first fight is an absolutely ridiculous debut. And
Madness.
In his first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in his first 6 fights, he fought Dennis Bermudez, Leonard Garcia, Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier. In his first 6 fights. My God, what a fucking warrior. Anyway, like for me, I don't know the route to victory here for Max Holloway because as both of you have alluded here, it's too quick. There's not enough time for him to re-engineer his style to put a stamp on Volkanovski. I mean, how do you beat Volkanovski? Well, Volkanovski's really good going forward. He's obviously a good wrestler. He's got a good base. His fights low. His stance is low. He's very powerful. I mean, the answer to that really is pressure footwork, right? Stop him coming forward. But that's Max's game, and Volkanovski took him out of it. I think this is a really interesting fight, and I don't know. I mean, Sean, maybe you can help me break this down as to how you see Max winning this, but I think this is a really tough fight for Max.
I think it is a tough fight. Something that I'll say for Max, which in my eyes has always been something that's quite unique about him, is that he's always struck me as a guy that's very good at making adjustments mid-fight and also adjustments in relation to the opponent that he's fighting. So, for example, against Cub Swanson, I remember when he was fighting Cub, there wasn't so much of a leg kick threat. But Cub sort of had similar, like quite strong boxing. He was coming forward and stuff like that. And Max Holloway was like constantly stance switching to sort of negate it. I think it's just so hard, like you say, against Volkanovski. In such a short space of time, he's taken away what Max is best at, which is essentially drawing people into sort of close quarter trades with him, and then just tiring them out and exhausting him. I think he almost needs to take the perspective of someone that's just trying to win a decision in this matchup, because if he even starts to leave his leg out for that leg kick early on, I think this could look really bad for him again. But yeah, the answer is I have no idea. But he has always been a guy that's very sort of strategic, and he's very good at changing his strategy according to the guy that he fights. So if there is a guy that can find a way around this, I think it's Max Holloway. But no, I'm stumped.
I completely agree. I I don't know what happens here. But I think okay, let's start with picks, right? Let's start with picks. So, Jack, who have you got out of Volkanovski Holloway?
I've got Alexander Volkanovski via unanimous decision.
Sean?
Right, I'm going to go with the wild card here. I'm going to say that Max Holloway wins this back, and the blessed era starts again.
And how does he win it?
Unanimous decision.
I'm going to go with Jack, and I'm going to go Volkanovski. Unanimous decision. I think it's the safest bet. Piotr Jan, Jose Aldo. Sean?
I'm going to go with Peter Yan. I'm going to say that this is a big sort of changing of the guard fight, even though there are things about Aldo's size specifically that worry me a bit with this one. But I'm a big fanboy for Peter Yan right now.
And how's he going to finish it?
I think it could be round 4 TKO.
Okay. Jack?
Eastern European boxing, TKO in round 3.
And I'm going to take Piotr Jan, and I'm going to take him via a TKO as well. So,
come on, Harry, pick a round.
I think it's going to be late, to be honest. I think 4th round is probably fine. I think that, look, we know that Jose Aldo is a strong 3-round fighter, even if he takes the second round off in a 3-round fight. But I think, obviously, you can't really take a round off against Piotr Jan, but I do think that Jose is experienced enough, and we will see some experience show here. But I think that Piotr Jan will just wear him down, and I think he will finish him, but I think he'll finish him late. Andrade Namajunas, I'm going to take Rose Namajunas with a TKO in the 4th. I think that what we'll see here...
Harry, is this not a 3-rounder?
No, it's a title fight. No, it's not a title fight. Oh my God, it's not a title fight. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. No, fuck that then. It's unanimous decision. Rose unanimous decision. I don't.
You know this is a
finishing
rematch, don't you?
I do know it's a rematch. Fuck you, Sean. Fuck you, Sean. You're such a prick. Sean, go on. Tell me, what's your pick for this fight?
Yeah, this is 100% Rose's fight to lose. If she goes to that Kimura again, my main prediction is that it'll probably just make me cry. But I say TKO round 3 for Rose.
Jack?
Yeah, I was leaning Rose initially, but I think picking Andrade to knock her out again is way more fun, so that's my pick. Third round.
You're such a bastard. All right, fine. So now we'll go to the Jack's favourite fight on the card, Ozdemir Prochazka. Jack, who have you got?
I never said it was my favourite, but it is. It's up there. Yeah, Ozdemir. TKO inside the first 2.
Well, that's a shit pick. Pick your fucking round.
All right, I'm gonna go round 1. I'm gonna go round 1. Yeah.
Round 1. Sean?
Ozdemir round 3 TKO.
Round 3. Interesting. And fuck it, I'll go down the middle. Ozdemir round 2 TKO. God. Right. Paige Van Zandt versus Amanda Ribas. Sean, what's your pick? Ribas what?
Ribas. Fuck. Round 2 TKO.
Oh my God, round 2.
And that's quite kind, to be fair.
Wow. Jack?
I was originally thinking this was going to be like a 30-25 unanimous decision, just a 15-minute whacking, but I actually think that I can see a scenario where Paige tries that stupid fucking front headlock takedown, whatever it is, and
don't say it.
The back and face crushes her. So that's my pick. Amanda Ribas by face crush in round 2.
Oh, that hurt me.
So my pick is going to be a Ribas unanimous decision. I think that Paige has had a long layoff, and I think Paige is just so tough as fuck that she's just going to weather the storm, and she's going to eat all of the shots, all of them. She'll be eating shots like a Chinese buffet, mate. That's what's going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I think. So Zaleski dos Santos versus Muslim Salikov. I'm picking Salikov TKO first round. I think this is not going to be this is not going to go second round, third round. I think that he's going to fucking run in. Zaleski is going to run in and he's just going to get absolutely mollywopped. He's going to get a Jack-style whacking. Jack, who have you got in this?
I would love to see this go 3, just because I think it could just be an absolute classic of just stupidity. But I agree. I think Salikov's probably going to take him out first round. Yeah, I think on a side note, I know we haven't discussed this much. I think a bet on Zaleski to win by submission could be a bit interesting, right? I feel like that could be the X factor here.
Okay. Sean, who have you got?
I'm going to go with Salikov not by TKO, but by horrendous knockout in round 1.
Okay, so I've written the words horrendous knockout. So that's good. Okay.
Good.
Amir Khani versus Henry. I think Makwan gets this done via unanimous decision, to be honest. I don't think I see him subbing Henry. I know Henry did get subbed against Dan Ige, but I think Makwan will take it over the distance. Sean, what have you got in this?
Yeah, I'm going by Jack's rule here, to be honest, about picking a dominant wrestler. I think Makwan's going to get a pretty easy decision here, to be honest. And
Jack?
Yeah, you can't trust people with 2 first names, right? So Makwan and Amirkhani, Renation choke first round.
Jesus fucking Christ.
That is a serious part of this fight we didn't speak about, but
Danny Henry's
it's a big X factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on there? Why?
Santos Bogatov. Sean, who have you got?
Go to Jack for this one, real quick.
Okay, Jack, who have you got, my friend?
I am going to go Leo Santos by decision.
Decision. All right. I'm going to take Bogatov just because he's undefeated and I like an undefeated fighter. And I'm going to take him by unanimous decision. Sean, can you round us off?
I'm going to be on it. Like, Jack telling me that Santos is 40 years old has completely changed the way that I look at this. Yeah, I'm going to go with Bogatov as well. Say he's just going to get things to the fence, smaller cage, and wrestle out a decision here.
All right. Tybura versus Romanov. I actually don't care. Can I put that as a pick?
I'm the same as you.
Of course you can.
All right. So my pick for Tybura Romanov is either, but I don't care. Sean?
I think Tybura is going to get knocked out the second round.
Jack?
I'm going to pick Maxim Grishin, not Romanov. And
Why have I written Romanov? Grishin.
It was a fairly late swap. I'll let you off for that one. It's not as bad as the old Cerrone Pettis. I'm going to take Maxim Grishin by third round TKO.
All right. Jack, who've you got in this fight that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce? Is it
Raulian Paiva by unanimous decision?
by unanimous decision? You don't think he finishes him?
Nah, Zalgas looks pretty durable. He got stopped early on when he was basically getting out wrestled by another dad, and was stopped with ground and pound. But his chin looks.
All right. Jack again muted himself too early. What he wanted to say was his chin looks good.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a moron.
He's done it again. That's hilarious. Sean, what's your pick for this?
Yeah, I'm thinking Paiva unanimous decision as well.
And we're all going with the same pick. So I will also go Paiva versus unanimous decision. Rosa Mello, Sean, this absolute barn burner. Can you pick this for me?
I'm going to say that there is absolutely no chance of a finish in this fight. If it happened 1,000 times, it would go to a decision 1,000 times. And you can write that all down, Harry.
1,000-time decision. Yeah. Who's going to win that 1,000-time decision?
Carol Rosa.
Yeah, Rosa. Jack, who've you got?
There'll be a few
30-27
as well.
Sorry, Sean?
30-27, Carol Rosa.
Rosa unanimous decision. And I will take Rosa by TKO in the third because I hate Sean. So, yeah.
You're a lunatic, Harry.
These things
You're
happen.
mental.
So, Jack, obviously you're going to pick Davy Grant. So talk me through your pick.
Nah, just Davy Grant by whatever he wants, right? He's just going to show up there and he's just going to fucking Davy Grant this guy. So yeah, no official pick, just Davy Grant.
Just Davy Grant, right?
By however he feels.
Sean?
Yeah, I'm Davy Grant by unanimous decision.
Okay, cool. And I'm going to take Davy Grant by submission. Hopefully a rear naked choke in the second round. All right, gentlemen. Well, that rounds out our UFC 251 breakdown. Any final thoughts either on just your life or, anything you want to share? Sean?
My only final thoughts are, sorry to steal Sean's thunder once again.
It's fine. Fuck Sean.
I apologise for my poorly timed muting on this and kind of any issues that has caused to the podcast. And
I mean, I actually think...
I promise that I will improve.
I actually think as he mutes himself prematurely again, this is just absolutely brilliant. What I actually think is Jack should be apologising for is not having a steady Wi-Fi connection so that we could see him in a hammock. Me and Sean were blessed. Oh, here he is, lads. Here he is. There's a snippet for you. There is a snippet. Beautiful. We've got Dog and we've got Jack in a hammock. Phenomenal. For anyone that's listening to this on the audio broadcast, please now go and jump on YouTube just so you can see Jack in a hammock. Yeah, Sean, anything you want to add?
Well, I'd actually like to complain, Harry, about the way that you once again have slighted the name of Fabio Maldonado. Like, it doesn't go unnoticed. Like, you keep saying horrible things about a man that has built a legacy that, probably won't be matched by many people and maybe by any other fighter ever. And yeah, hopefully we have a podcast one day where we can sort of, go into the history of that guy, what a great man he was. God, tearing up right now.
I mean, look, he's 40 years old. He's got a 26-14 record. I can't believe that his last fight he actually won.
His fight against Stipe was really close. There were some big moments for Fabio there, for sure.
Fuck's sake.
Stipe wanted out of there. I swear to God.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
Name me another light heavyweight that has fought the two best MMA heavyweights of all time.
Mate.
There you go. There you go,
It doesn't
Harry.
even matter. He lost both of them. He fucking got wrecked.
End the podcast. End the podcast. That's it. Argument done.
Oh, Jesus.
I need to go look after the kids. I've got 2 kids and a dog.
Can we mute the host?
Fuck you, can you mute the host? Yeah, I mean, yeah. For anyone listening, Jesus, this podcast has derailed so quickly. I'll wrap this up because I'm now getting bullied by a guy in a hammock and some fucking geezer from Manchester. They got single-legged one time.
Oh no!
That's right, fuckface. Please, if you're listening to this on an audio podcast, share it, like it, subscribe to things. Just do whatever you can to get this out there. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, please do the same thing. Like, subscribe, share, tell your nan about it, tell your mates about it. Listen to it while you're going on an ultra marathon run like dickhead Sean over here. Just do whatever you can to get us out there. It's greatly appreciated. We are looking at taking this podcast out of the All About Balance bracket, and hopefully we'll do that soon. Just if Sean and Jack aren't just fucking useless streaks of piss and can think about a name, then
I've come up with loads of good names,
mate. Anything to do with John Lineker is
your
not
reluctance,
getting
Harry.
past. It's not getting past.
How about Mike Perry's Corner podcast? How about some?
How about the Maldonado Minute?
Oh, that's actually a good name. That's actually a good name.
That's where we should go for sure.
The Maldonado Minute. Oh Jesus. Anyway,
it's how the length of time most of his heavyweight fights have lasted as well. There's a lot of significance behind that.
But yeah, please feel free to tell people, share, and whatever. And also, if you have any feedback about Sean and Jack's absolutely ludicrous takes, then feel free to throw that in as well, because Jesus Christ, it would make me feel better and it would make me sleep better at night. It really would. The emotional turmoil that I go through in preparation for this podcast, to know the absolute shithousery that's going to come out of Sean and Jack's mouth, it's just phenomenal. I mean, imagine me sitting here. We fucking recorded this at 9 a.m. on a Sunday, and I've got to listen to Jack in a fucking hammock talking about Maldonado, Davy Grant, Mike Perry's corner work. Like, Jesus Christ, why do I do this shit? Why do I do this? But yes, right. I think I don't care about anything either of you have got to say for the rest of this podcast. So I'm going to close this off. Sure, Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, my friends, and we will see you all very soon. Cheers.
Thank you.